Henry Ford once said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Since Henry Ford started his assembly line in 1913, manufacturing has operated on a trade-off. Speed comes from repetition. Flexibilities come at a cost. You do not get both. That belief has shaped factories, supply chains, and cost models for over a century. Haddy is asking a different question. What if you don't have to choose between speed and flexibility when you're building things at a scale? My name is Peng Cau from Siemens Digital Industry Software. I'm your host of Pioneers, the Siemens podcast where we explore the stories behind both startups transforming industries. Today, we're talking about 3D printing, not as a lab tool or a gimmick, but as a manufacturing system built around microfactories, where speed and flexibility are expected to coexist. My guest is John Rogers, who goes by Jay. Jay, welcome. Before we go further, we would love to hear you introduce yourself and give us an elevator pitch about Haddy.
I'm the CEO and co-founder of Haddy, and I have been dreaming of digital manufacturing since I was a little boy. At 12, my father decided to retire and move us onto a sailboat.
Oh.
And in his view, that needed to be a boat that we built. And then it proceeded to carry our family around for 7 years around the world.
Okay.
And so as a young boy, I was fascinated by the paper to creation process, and I didn't even really understand at that point what it was going to mean for me. So the idea of analog manufacturing, from carving stone to cutting wood, in simple, has been one where people have taken machines to augment what they do. And what you could think about that is like, I used to make furniture with an adze or with a saw or with a sander, a block sander. And so you get the beginnings of automation in the furniture industry or in the boat industry. And then you hear about Industry 4.0 as that comes along. And for me, that really began to pique my interest of what if it wasn't just about making machines more efficient to help humans be more efficient, but what if the humans were out of the way and the machines could take the digital instructions and more perfectly build the things that they were looking to build. Now that to me was fascinating, and that was the basis on which I started Haddy.
Well, I look around here, Jay, and I mean, you have so many beautiful pieces, but I want to just learn a bit about you. You said that you're an accidental entrepreneur. How did you stumble into being an entrepreneur?
So I had a feeling, I think as I was growing up, that I wanted to fix things that were broken. And I think part of it for me was realizing that the humanness of this world, there are so many people that exist on very little. And we have the luxury of being in the United States where there is so much, that if you can do something great with that, you can help so many more people in the world. So seeing the world from the sea, it helped me to have that perspective as a little kid about what my impact could be. And so it starts with a perspective. Then I had a great education at Princeton University, and I learned as a mechanical and aerospace engineer how you think about designing systems. After graduation, I moved to China, and I worked for 3 years in places which were importing manufacturing technology at a very high rate. And you see now the tail of that, which is the loss of industrial production capacity in developed nations, primarily because they were chasing low labor rates that then became a problem. I could see that firsthand. And I knew at the time that I wanted to do something different. I spent 3 years in China. I moved back to the United States, and I got a job as a financier working for a bank buying company.
Okay.
It gave me a look around balance sheets. It taught me about gap accounting. It taught me about private markets when you buy things, public markets when you buy things, what it means to own equity and debt in something. It's about raising capital and distributing capital. So at the end of that time, I was in business school. I went to Stanford University, and I was thinking about what is the kind of business I'm going to build? And I met a Marine, and we were classmates. Today we're best friends, and this was in 1999. And he said to me, have you ever led anyone before? And I thought about that for a little while, and I realized that I was missing something. Being smart is just not enough. There's a quote from Phillips Brooks that I love, which is, kindness without intelligence is weak and feeble, and intelligence without kindness is dangerous. But the two together are the shortest foundation to humanity. So I wanted to be both kind and intelligent.
Yeah.
And being a leader is something that I didn't know. So I dropped out of Stanford and I joined the Marines. And it was 2001. And then I remember I was in my first duty station in Hawaii, and it was about 4:30 in the morning. And I turned on my radio on September 11th at 4:30, and there was silence on NPR. And then I heard the announcers coming on and saying, something's just hit the second tower.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I deployed for about 7 years straight.
Okay.
And I had no idea how my life was going to change. And what I learned was a different side of the world. So I got even more inspired to make the difference that I wanted to make, but I just knew it was going to take more. And after two of my best friends were killed in the military in my last deployment, that was like the spark moment for me to say, now I'm going to do this. So I applied to business school, I got into Harvard, and I went and I wrote the plan for the world's first 3D printed car company. I built that company, the world's first 3D printed car company. I raised many hundreds of millions of dollars. I had 30 deployments. We deployed 150 electric autonomous level 4 vehicles that were fully 3D printed. We were also a market ahead of its time.
Yes.
Deploying an autonomous electric vehicle is a difficult thing to do.
Yes.
Not because it's technically difficult to build, it is.
Yeah.
But also because regulators and just the common people are used to being behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Yeah.
And that was relevant to me in learning that, like, be relevant to your market. So another learning for me as an entrepreneur. After doing that for about 13 years, I realized that, like, I learned so much about digital technologies, and I was really ready to refine what the advancement of that would be. And today, that is what Haddy has become.
I love, Jay, that you are connecting all these pieces in your life to build multiple business. One of the things you touched on, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes forget, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that do not succeed in their first try. And the goal isn't to give up. You learn your lesson. You learn that it's not the technology that make or break you. A lot of time the market isn't ready. So is that why 4 years ago that you started Haddy not as a product company, but as a manufacturing company providing a specific service to companies that need what you're making? Is that a fair statement?
Very much a fair statement. And I think a lot of people questioned at the time, what's your product? And I said, well, our product is actually manufacturing. And they would say, okay, so is that like manufacturing as a service? And I said, sort of. We've had a lot of SaaS, software as a service. So it was an easy jump for some people to think about manufacturing being the product. But at a too logical assumption, it's sort of like, oh, well then you need to sell software so people can hook into your manufacturing. And the story is more messy than that. 3D printing is a technology. It's not an industry in and of itself. It is a group of technologies that revolutionize the way you make things.
Right.
And so when you're revolutionizing them, you have to pick carefully about what that means for the service that you provide for people. Who's your customer? And it is a fair statement to say that we were delivering a product of manufacturing, and it is embedded in the name. Haddy means heroic, agile,
Awesome.
Designed, durable, and yours.
I was going to ask you about the Haddy name. That's awesome.
And so, and the logo is the on button to the future. And so of manufacturing. So our product was manufacturing, and we say yours. What we mean is we're an enterprise business that's here to make you successful. So I was trying to build on the shoulders of people who needed the things, whatever those things were. And I wanted to do it in a way that was both agile, designed, and durable. And so I wanted to be able to shift to the speed of digital. I wanted it to be reliable, durable, and I wanted it to be highly designed for what they wanted. So that's the ADD in the middle of Haddy. You could think about it as ADD, or you could think about it as additive, and that was for us important, a little piece of it.
I love that. And so you touch on something that I find interesting, right? Because you talk about revolutionize the industry. And so many times when we think of that, we think of a technology that's going to transform the entire industry. But you're more about the process and not the technology itself. So I think the message to listeners is you don't always have to invent the greatest thing. You can look at how to do something differently. And I know you are very focused on local manufacturing and microfactories. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
The microfactory, it's a theme, it's a theory. It is, if robots could make things, where would you put them to deliver those things? That's what a microfactory is. And so you brought up Henry Ford at the beginning. I love the quotables of Henry Ford. You know, if I asked them what they would want, they would say faster horses. And in some cases, you're damn right. Yeah. They wanted faster horses. It just depends how you define horse. And I think that in this particular case, when we think about Henry Ford's version of building the River Rouge plant and his arguments with Frederick Taylor for developing the theory of scientific management, he said, my engineers will take on your workers and we'll win. And Taylor was right and Ford was wrong. And so they needed to piece rate out work and create scientific management, which got us unions today, because it created something that was very inhuman. It created something that was not designed. It was something that was very rote. And so the reason why we have the AFL-CIO and the reason why we have the automakers union or auto workers union is because of scientific management. And that was because the only way to make a reliable car, a Model T at the time, was to do it the same way every time with no deviation. Right. The world of microfactories is very different because 3D printing portends that a designer can change their idea at any time with very low friction and that the robot won't argue. It will just execute. Yeah. So a microfactory is first about distributing this worldview of making things digitally close to where people need things. It's a very simple notion. It says, gone are the days of making a car in Detroit and then shipping it all over the world. It had to be done that way in Henry Ford's time because they needed scientific management to be tightly controlled, and they were making their own electricity in the River Rouge plant. They were making their own steel. They were vulcanizing their own rubber. You don't do that in a distributed fashion. You do it all in one place. And so we got this notion that became instantiated in microeconomic theory, which is basically a mass economy of scale. I get an economy in selling something by scaling it. Yeah. Well, today, that doesn't exist in microfactories. We get what could be called an economy of scope, which means the more that we make things that are different, the more people will pay for them because they match what they want. So if you think today about Instagram and how it changes every hour, every minute, where people are saying, I saw this, and it gets accelerated by stable diffusion models and other things like that. People in mass factories can't keep up. They tooled in scientific management to make the perfect mattress or to make the perfect clothing. Gap was destroyed by this when Zara came along because Zara figured out how to make things a little faster than Gap did. And now robots can make things so much faster. Yeah. And so microfactories read the room really fast, and then they make the things that people need. And they help humans to be closer to the design aspect of things rather than to be sitting there and hammering a nail or running a saw, which is both dangerous and it is hard to learn. So design is different. It's less dangerous, and it is more about what humans do really well. It's this gray matter that sits between our ears where we can imagine things differently. And so I dream of a day where the robots take that imagination and they turn that into the things that you can then use. And that's what you get out of a digital design process powered by a microfactory that is in a community. It's, for some people, obvious. And for other people, it goes against 70 years of manufacturing history. And unfortunately, Henry Ford didn't have any quotes about microfactories because it wasn't possible for him at the time.
Well, I think that's a challenge, right? When you're trying to do something different. And in your case, you're offering speed and flexibility. So you adapt because you're a microfactory. You adapt to whatever the market needs within an 8 hours. So from your perspective, what is the biggest challenge then to try to convince somebody that, you know, this is the new way of doing things? Who do you have to push back to convince that this is the future?
Well, that's a great question. Another quote that I love is that the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And so, like, there are some people who are already convinced. They already know.
Right.
And then there are other people that have never thought about it before, but are easy to convince. And then there are people who are the late adopters who are like, this is how I've always done it,
Right.
and I don't want to change. So convincing people is not the same, depending upon where you go. One, I don't like to be a convincer. I would rather that what we do stands on its own. And so I try to create as direct a connection as possible to the people who are getting the products and to the people that are making it for them. What we want to do is show them from the beginning, one, that we're not taking their business. We want them to be in business. We want to help them do their business more. So if you're a speaker manufacturer, design the speaker, design the plenum, tell us what you want. We'll help you make that faster with more changes. We'll get the right stiffness in the material so that you get beautiful reverberations from the speaker. And in the end, you put a beautiful speaker in someone's studio or in someone's house, and it was digitally manufactured, but to your design and your specifications and your drivers and your electronics and the things that come into making a speaker. You don't have to convince somebody if you show them in the first week that their design is manifest. I mean, that is, I guess, a form of convincing, but it's really just doing what they asked.
Fair enough.
And so, like, I think being responsive is the best way to get somebody to believe in this process.
Jay, when I look around, there's a lot of furnitures. And I know you started Haddy 4 years ago with furnitures. Is that the only thing? But you allude to customer coming in whatever product they want. So where is your break in terms of furnitures versus non-furnitures and other products? What are some examples that you're serving right now of the markets?
I had come from 13 years of making cars that were 3D printed.
Yeah.
So when people said, well, how do you know you can 3D print a chair? I mean, is it safe? And I would chuckle because I would say, like, we've done harder. But I didn't want them to feel bad. I just felt confident that we could make things that would be durable and beautiful and all of the things. And so that's when I meant, like, we had enough guts at the time and enough knowledge to know that we could scale pretty quickly. And I think that nobody imagined how that could be. When we started and opened up as a furniture maker, we knew we were going to print the world.
Okay.
The on button to the world was already there. And if you look back at our interviews and other things like that, it was only when we said, like, to our marketing, if you're a furniture company, you retail, we can help you, because we needed to be focused on building our first P&L. And so we didn't want to start making for cars or start making for boats or start making for concrete companies or start making for lighting companies, because we knew that the easiest place to start was something that was really hard to source, and that was furniture. And we continued on that trend for about 2 years. And then eventually, when tariffs got put in place, all the convincing that we might have had to do otherwise became really easy, because people started to ask, like, hey, I might not be able to buy this from a global supply chain ever again, or at least in the near future, without paying a lot of extra money. How might I do this differently? And so then it became easier to be able to have conversations with people to do that.
Okay, so it has expanded. Furniture was the start. So Jay, I know you mentioned earlier that you had a 3D printed car company for 13 years, which I believe shut down in 2022. Mm-hmm. What would you say were the painful lessons that you are still feeling it today, or the lessons that you go, you know what, this is a good lesson I'm going to take on to build Haddy and learn from it?
I try not to practice regret.
I love it.
So I think that everything has to be looked at as, like, it happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I'm a very faithful person. I pray every day, every night. And I think that, like, it's really about praying to have the equanimity to think about, like, what am I learning from this thing? So if I was measuring myself by being a successful automotive entrepreneur, then I would come up short on the things that I'm doing in life. But when I come back to, like, kindness and intelligence together, it just helped me to be smarter. And I also realized that the automotive industry is not a very kind industry overall. It is about getting the last micro penny out of everything. Digitally manufacturing something is hard to do. And so the car industry for me was a good place to cut my teeth. And it was a good place for me to see, when you have a lot of suppliers, that the suppliers that are not digital, they really hold you back. But when you have to hand those off to suppliers and they immediately turn them into shop drawings, or they have a different software or other things like that, you realize that you really can only move as fast as the slowest person in your supply chain. and they define your cycle time of getting something changed or your cycle time of getting something built. And so that's why we've optimized to sort of organize. Some of the Korean car companies are the best in the world of it. They just invite everybody in under the house, and they're like, okay, well, if you're going to make for us, you need your factory right here on our mega campus. That's one way to organize those things. And I realized that like we needed to get a lot simpler. So our options of what we were going to make got pretty small at the beginning because we wouldn't allow any other thing. There was no fastener, there was no adhesive, there was no paint, there was no electronics. I mean, it was just simple. The chair that we're sitting on right now, a lot of the other furniture that's around was made from one supplier.
Yeah.
And so that was an important part to get out of the automotive industry of 2,000 suppliers and to distill digital manufacturing into a more simplified manufacturing environment to start off.
So the other thing I'm curious, Jay, is that you have a very broad career, right? You were a Marine, you were a founder, investor, like you've done so much. What are the key traits that is Jay that you brought along in all these different roles that you play in your career that has made you successful?
That's a big question. And so and I think the moment you start to answer that question, it begins to get into the realm of hubris and other items like that. I mean, I like to say to my kids, like, I'm just Jay, I'm just dad. But like, I think of the things that stand out to me as I look back over, sort of a half century, and I think about what's made me a good entrepreneur. Some things stand out. I have a lot of grit. And people talk about that a lot. And I think that you know it when you have it. It's, I think an example would be, I served underneath a battalion commander, and he was famous for doing what was called a macress hike, which is a 26-mile hike with all of your combat gear. Ooh. And so you go out as a unit of 900 people and you get in a march and you march for 26 miles. And what he would do that was quite special is that we would get to the end where the finish line was, and he would march the 900 people about 200 meters past the end line. And the reason why he did it is
push that a little bit more,
just to see who would drop out in the last 200 meters.
Yeah.
And then every one of those people had to go do it again the next week. Okay. And everyone that didn't passed the test. And I think that that's, to me, a little example of a definition of grit. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to go 200 meters past the end of a 26-mile hike? Because that might just make all the difference.
Yes.
And so grit is one of the things that I have. I'm curious. And so I try to ask good questions. I am humble because I know that there's always somebody out there that's done it better than me. And so I think that is important. I try to be intelligent. I try to read, and I try to learn from other people that are out there, because once you stop thinking that you have something to learn, you're toast. And so those things are kind of hallmarks of what, and my friends would call me optimistic. Like, I try to be indefatigable, which is like, I get up in the morning. Jeff Immelt, who was the CEO of GE, said this really well. I remember it when I listened to him. He's like, I go to bed every night and I feel beat up, and then I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I say, hello, beautiful. Yeah, and it's like, yep. You kind of need that if you're going to do it, because no one else is going to be your own internal cheerleader. Yep. You need to be your own first. Yep. And so I think those things are important. And then having faith in something that is higher than what you are is an important piece for me to be able to get there. And so I think those are some of the things that I rely on that makes me who I am today as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think you touch on so many key traits that makes a founder successful or not successful. And I think grit is probably the most critical, because so many founders give up. When someone asks me, should I start a company? I'm like, well, are you willing to give up on everything? What's the worst thing could happen to you? And are you okay with that? Because people just give up, right? And to your point, no one's cheering you on as a founder. In fact, most people are saying, why are you doing it? Are you crazy, right? And so you have to be your own cheerleader. So I think that's awesome. And I think it really depends on the individual. So what is it that makes you feel that this is going to be successful for you?
We stand on the shoulders of giants. It would be impossible for us to build this company if people hadn't made large robots. So the automotive industry now has several million units of these large robotic arms deployed around the world, welding for cars. We need them. We need people like Tesla to buy a bunch of robots and program them in what I would call just simple machine process automation to be able to put together a Model S, because they're bringing the cost down of the industrial robotics. Right. We needed AI to come along in a 2023 generative pre-trained transformer moment where suddenly it's like, wow, we have a possibility of passing the Turing test. What an incredible thing to build a business based upon. And if I had tried to go out and build a robotics company and solve an AI that would build something that could pass the Turing test, that's just been impossible. So all of these giants that we stand upon are necessary for us to build our business right now. Sensors, we currently watch our print, every pixel that we print from a thermal perspective, a laser perspective, a motion perspective. We need sensors that are capable of gathering and processing that much information. And if we didn't have NVIDIA come along with graphic cards that can do that at the speed and pace that you need to do it, if you didn't have FLIR that came along that could look with hyper accurate looks at thermal signatures on printed pixels, then you couldn't do what we needed. So we needed all of these things to be able to build a data set, to be able to train foundational models, to be able to say, that's wrong, this is right, print the right way, not the wrong way, and move on with the next thing.
You touched on it earlier that, 20, 30 years ago, companies were, offshoring for cheaper labor. Is it because if you look back, technology wasn't there to build this macro factory that you're trying to do right now? We're standing on some pretty big giants to make technology available for you to build these micro factories. Is that where we're going?
That's
Is
where
because
we're
of
going.
that?
But now there's a change. And the change is that we're no longer chasing labor. And I think that what that ought to mean for all of us is, what does that mean for the exponential population growth that we have in the world? When I was born, there were 3.5 billion people in the world. Now, they're going on 8 billion people in the world. So in my lifetime, there has been a doubling of population. If you go back 200 years from the day that I was born, you were under 1 billion. And if you go back 500 years, you were at 300 million in the whole world. So we have all these people, and I think we need to ask ourselves, what is life going to look like in the next 10 years? As AGI's, sort of a general intelligence begins to run more things that we do, I think the critical skill is going to be kindness.
Okay, interesting.
I think that's the critical skill. I think we need to learn how to be better humans to each other, because there will be many things that are made for us more cheaply. There will be many things that will be more available. Food. Malthus was wrong. He said, well, human population is geometric and food is only arithmetic, and so we're going to run out of food. He didn't count that we would have 19 times better agrarian efficiency because of biochemistry. And so that was good for us. We had more food and could grow. Now we are going to have robots doing our jobs. You don't need to look very far to see them. They're going to be better soldiers. They're going to be better everything. So the question is, the core skill is, how can we live better as ourselves and with each other? And when I speak to my boys as sort of a bellwether for me about what I do, what I'm trying to do is to teach them more enjoyment in the day that they have. You don't have to work so hard just to be able to have a life. I think what you need to do is work better to have a good life. And I think that we need to start judging things like GDP a little bit differently than how much factor productivity could I generate as a human, but how much more clean air can I generate as a human? And I'm not just talking about build a green economy. I'm really literally saying, in the moment in COVID when everything got a little bit nicer to look out in the sky because there was less, do you like that? If you like that, figure out how to build a company that can deliver that.
And I think in many ways, what you're trying to do with these micro factories is giving people that lifestyle that you're talking about, right? You don't have to travel far away from your core family if you're able to get a job at a Haddy, and if Haddy has multiple networks of multiple micro factories, you're basically bringing the job to the people. And if you're giving them that, I always think for founders, one of the greatest gifts we can give to people is actually jobs, because that changed their whole life. And so I think that ties nicely with your philosophy of kindness and leadership. And they don't have to be oxymoron.
I mean, one of the great things I learned in the Marine Corps is we had 2 jobs. One was mission accomplishment. That's pretty obvious. And then the other one was troop welfare. And troop welfare was not, hey, make sure that everybody has good liberty package and gets paid enough. Troop welfare was keep them busy. And so in this particular case, for me, welfare for my team is give them a great job.
Absolutely.
And so and what does that mean? It's an enjoyable job. It's one where they enjoy coming to work and they see the fruits of their labor and doing those kinds of things. And so when we think about what that looks like, to me, if you can't bring the person to the factory, bring the factory to the person. And that is the way we envision microfactory distribution, because what we're doing is we're shipping it once. Ship the microfactory to the region. This is a regional reshoring of manufacturing all over the world. So it's saying if you lost it in Madagascar and you lost it in South Africa and you lost it in Germany and you lost it in New York, you can have it back. And you can build the businesses around that help that regional economy to develop. I believe very seriously that this is what it means to bring the mountain back to Moses. That's what a microfactory is about.
Love it. So I know you had talked earlier about expanding to a couple of cities in the U.S. If you want to talk more about that. And where else are you thinking that microfactory would benefit, beyond the U.S., right? Where else can it benefit?
I'm aware that the founder of YouTube once said, I think that the total number of videos that's ever going to be promulgated on the internet or wherever is going to be like a couple hundred, I think is what he said. Well, that was famously wrong. And he founded the company that was famously doing it. So I think when I say how many microfactories we're going to have, I think I'm going to be famously wrong. And here's the reason why. I sort of put a number out there and I was like, I think there's probably 200 places we could put a microfactory. But when you look at this, it probably makes sense that people will have them in thousands or tens of thousands of places. But just to stick, directionally, we're going from just a few to many. So in the United States, we're starting in the Southeast. Good region, got a lot of people from Atlanta to Miami and over from, let's say Mobile, Alabama, all the way over to, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. And so that's the Southeast. When we look at the Midwest, let's just say the Northern Midwest, if you're in Chicago, you can sort of around an 8-hour drive, you can get 30 million people in the US. That's a tenth of the United States. So it's a good place. And then you go down to Galveston and you think about Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas. I mean, those are big. That quadfecta in Texas is a really big place for jobs to be had. Look in the Los Angeles basin, you've got from San Diego for the 7-hour drive up to northern Los Angeles, which ought to take only 2 hours when there's no traffic. There are a lot of people and a lot of intensity and a lot of port access. San Francisco, Seattle, Mid-Atlantic, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. And then up in the Northeast, you've got just the breadbasket of population in the United States. So I think distributing in the US in those population dense areas will allow us to start. Then the question is, should we be in Denver? Yes. Should we be in Columbus, Ohio? Yes. Should we be in Atlanta instead of just being in Florida? Yes. And should we be in these places that are stitching together the areas in between? And there's no reason why we shouldn't be in Bozeman or Billings. They're far away from a lot of other places, and the population isn't as big. But as we get more efficient about setting up our microfactories, I think that picofactories could be in the offing, and that's just in the United States. And that is sort of the answer in terms of growth.
And I know you mentioned that you usually pick sort of an 8-hour radius of a major population. What is the reasoning behind, obviously reaching the market, but what is the reason behind the product per se? Are there products that you can't, that it's not able to be 3D printed, but that 8 hours still critical, right? So
the reason for the 8 hours was really for us to talk about the fact that when you're doing global shipping or you're doing less than load shipping or transshipment, if anybody's ever shipped anything by UPS before, you realize how much gets lost and how much gets broken. And usually it happens because you put something on a truck, then it goes to a warehouse, it gets shifted around, it gets put on a train or a different truck, might get put on an airplane. Shrinkage is a big problem. So if you could take that out and you could be more direct with your customer, off your dock, direct to the customer, then that would be good. But once we start to do intermodal shipments, things become a lot more complicated. So that's why we sat within the day cab drive is what we called it. That means a truck that doesn't have a sleeper and it doesn't have a warehouse in between. We're just going to leave the factory and go direct to our customer. And then they may have a distribution network that's close by in that place, but usually that is really close to the end consumer when we get there.
So is it fair that right now where we are in St. Petersburg, Florida, you are standardizing on your process before you start expanding? is there any assumption that the product that you will be 3D printed will be different from microfactory to microfactories?
Great question. So one of the things we're doing, as you state, is getting our process right. When you walk in the door, we want you to know that you're coming into the sales and demonstration area that we're sitting in right now. And then the next one over is recycling, material handling, and development of product. And then the next one beyond that is the robot bay where we make things in production. And that is a microfactory. And then around us is the population. We are 1 block away from the highway entrance. That was deliberate. And we are smack in the middle of 23 million people in this state.
Wow.
So what we're making is something that, regardless of your language, whether you are Filipino or whether you are Mexican or whether you are German or whether you are Chinese, when you go into a Haddy microfactory, it's set up the same way. Now, when we think about Siemens and we think about like the digital twinning of things, one of the things that we use that for is we want to be able to set up a factory as quickly as possible. So we want to show people like, here's how it plugs in. Here's how the material flows. Here's how the things go out of the factory. All of those things are about the same process imagined in an XR environment or an AR environment. So the building of a factory is like the building of the products. They are both twinned in that case.
Absolutely.
Now, your question about, are the things that come out of the factory the same? No and yes. We like to be able to load up a factory like, you know, the old version of I got my PC and all of the software and games came with it. You know what I mean? Now, our files are carefully vetted so that when you plug them into a microfactory, they can be printed. So when you set up a new microfactory, if you have a global network of 10,000 products that can be made at any microfactory, why not use them? And then if you decide that you want to tweak them a little bit, no penalty. And I think that's what's going to happen as people carry the files around from microfactory to microfactory.
So you mentioned that you're using Siemens Digital Twin to help standardize your process for building, you know, your network of microfactories. What is your estimate now from the day you identified a site to it up and running?
6 months.
And is your customer the consumer? Can I walk off the street and say, hey, Jay, can you print me something? Or is it more a B2B where it's, you know, someone who's wanting to sell lawn chair?
The question about consumers is a really good one. You know that the Y in Haddy is for yours. And we played a little coy with that because we're an enterprise business. And as we have our first 7 locations in the US, we're still an enterprise business. And as we have 100 locations around the world, we're still an enterprise business. But already today, there are enterprises that say, hold on a second, we've asked you to design something, and now you're going to make it, and you're going to deliver it to our warehouse, and then we're going to distribute it through a network of trucks. But if our warehouse was in Florida, for example, and we were already distributing it around Florida, is there a world in which you would just distribute it right off of your dock? And I think there is a world that that happens.
So it sounds like your opportunities are really just endless. There's so many ways this could go. But I know that last year you were accepted to the Disney Accelerator program and you raised some funding. How has that changed what Haddy stands for, or has it at all?
It's only accelerated what we've done. And I guess that's maybe why they call it the Disney Accelerator. But I think that what was interesting to us was not the raising of money around being involved with the Disney Corporation, but it was really more the accelerator part of it. What I believe is companies like Disney that run an accelerator, they do it in a much better way. What they've done is they've said, we've got this huge company that buys food and it buys IP and it buys marketing and it buys lots of things that make its experiences, cruise ships, all these kinds of things. And so Disney's accelerator says, if we buy all these things, how can we buy them better, faster, less expensive, more reliable, all of those things? So they try to bring in companies that are already working with them, and they try to say, I'm going to accelerate your business to do more for Disney. And you need a big multinational like that to have that kind of accelerator, I think, because what they are is they're their own internal customer wanting to do things better. They want better short form video. They want better vertical video. They want better telemetry. They want better projection. They want better 3D printed things. And so that's what we joined. And we joined specifically so we could help the manufacturing of parks and experiences get better faster.
So they're not asking you to change your business model. They are accelerating your business model for you.
Correct.
That's
They
awesome.
didn't come at us and say, now you're going to stand up in front of a panel of VCs and they're going to tell you how to take your business and make it better. They're going to say, you better know what you're doing. And we are going to help you to meet all the people within Disney that will accelerate your business. A very different kind of accelerator. And what we did is we demonstrated for all the people at Disney who hadn't heard of us yet what we do. But it wasn't a kind of thing where we were out there so that we could get advice. We weren't getting advised in that way. We were helping to meet more people within Disney.
Jay, you have accomplished so much at Haddy in 4 short years, really, just looking around. What is the one thing that you're most proud of?
I would say the thing that I am most proud of is the joy on our customers' faces when they get the things that we do. And some of that joy is super hard won. Some cases it's super easy and we deliver something and it's just absolutely delightful. Like our well chair, it was an accidental product that came from a yoga studio that somebody had and they wanted to do it. And then we have people that sit in it and it's just like, wow, this is comfortable. And like, I could sit in this for a long time. And then when you look at the cost of what it takes to make it is so affordable. And you look at the fact that it can be distributed from a microfactory and they're like, wow, this is such a great product. That is so deeply meaningful to me because it took that original designer of the well chair and all the things that we've added onto it. And it's just the perfect instantiation of the whole business. It makes me very proud to have the team members, the designers, the roboticists, all the people that came together on the head of a pin for that product and to have it be just well loved by consumers and to know that it's a recyclable material that one day will go back into granules and will create a light or will go and create something else. It's just so deeply satisfying.
When you first start talking about wanting to build Haddy, was there anyone who told you you can't do it or, doubt you? And how did you deal with that?
Well, I mean, yes, of course, there are always both sides of the coin. You get the people that are saying, oh my God, you got to do it. Sounds like the coolest idea. And you want to believe those people. And then you get the other people that just can't see past the way things are currently done. One of the things that's amazing is I can stand on this table and it can hold 800 pounds. If you made this out of metal, the way you have end tables for TVs, if you put 800 pounds on it, whoop, it would fall down. And so like we get the advantage of what's called anisotropy on this table. So the fibers are aligned to create strength where you want them. So they are a more beautiful way to make something that's an end table. But people have to experience it for themselves. And so I think that what I love about the making of furniture is that there were a lot of doubters at the beginning. It almost makes it more fun to be able to say like, I get that you didn't believe that it could happen, and that's okay. Let's prove you wrong.
Have you invite them in to prove them wrong?
We do, and we have fun with it.
I know there must be, as founders, to your point, there are days that are just tough, right? There are moments that you just want to give up. What does Jay do, or when employees feel like they want to give up? What does Jay say to himself or to employees to get that energy back up?
One thing which I would say to all entrepreneurs is if you are not ever having a hard day, I don't believe you. I don't think you are, trying hard enough or whatever it is. Everyone has hard days.
Yeah.
And when I say hard, I mean really hard, like drop to your knees in tears, trying to figure out what went wrong and you can't figure it out. And those days are just part of all of our lives, whether you admit them or not. There is no rugged founder who doesn't have those days. We polish up nicely most of the time, and it's great to sit down and have a conversation like this and reflect about the good things.
Yeah.
But really, it's hard to do this job. And so you need to find your touchstones. I don't think there's one touchstone, but if you are not having fun, then it's really worth saying something and find the people who aren't in your business that can have an outside opinion and have enough of them because they'll have a bad day too. And you don't want to be having a bad day relying on someone else who's having a bad day. You need enough of a network, a village, so that you can rely on those people. So that's one thing is I have a network of people that I deliberately do not want in my business because when I have a bad day, I just may need to call them up and say I need help. Now, the other thing is like praying. I've talked about it a couple of times in this interview, and like there is just something wonderful about not talking about it to another human and just believing that like there was a reason why the day got really hard and just giving that up. And so for me, that's to God. For other people, whoever you pray to will be I think, a good out-of-body experience for you.
Yeah.
Some people choose, it's not religious, but some people choose meditation as a way to be able to center themselves when the noise gets very loud. And I think that those kind of practices that aren't about talking to people are critically important.
Yeah.
And the other one is about health. Many people have said, like, the world is very complex and you can do many things until you are sick, and then you have one thing to do.
Right.
And that is to get well.
Right.
And so, like, I think if you know that, then you take care of yourself along the way.
Yeah.
And so for me, I do a lot to take care of myself. I go to bed now early. I go to bed at like 8:30 or 9, and I get up at 4:30 in the morning. Part of the reason is that means that I get almost 8 hours of sleep, like I was a kid again, but I get almost 8 hours of sleep, and then I get that precious 3 hours in the morning before anybody else is up in my time zone, and I get it. And for all the people that work with me in Europe or work with me in Japan or other places around the world, I don't really talk to them at that time. I get that space for myself, which is the time where I work out. I don't golf, I don't pickleball, but I am always available to try something new. And so, like swimming and, breath work, all those kinds of things. Be healthy, be active, find the space in your day where you can get enough sleep in order to be able to do those things, because life is long or it will be short if you don't. It is important to make sure you take care of yourself over the long run.
Well, and I also think, like, when you are doing something physical, it's that quiet time where your mind is clear. And as a founder, it also allows you to strategize. I used to get up at 5 a.m. I have 2 young kids, so I had to hike before they get up.
Yeah.
But that long walk in minus, 20 degree in Canada, right? My mind was just free. And a lot of the time, that's when I actually think about the company and the strategy and not dealing with the day-to-day problems of like customers calling angry or suppliers or any of the number of things. So it's more than just that physical health. And I think you're so right for founders that are listening, because I think that's something we don't always talk about. We make entrepreneurship sexy, but it's not. It's hard grind. And you want to give up.
Yeah, you do, and you need to find those touchstones. And I think, one of the times I love in life is getting a haircut. And people ask me why, like, you're a Marine, it's pretty simple. You can just zip, zip, zip and do it like this. But the thing that I love about the haircut is I can't look at my phone because I'm underneath the mat, that they put over you. And I can't have headphones in because they're buzzing right by my ear. So I just have to sit down and think. And the mesmerizing aspect of having something buzz on my head is relaxing. And that 20 minutes is a beautiful time. And so I love those moments about things like the walk uphill or the walk in the cold or other things. People talk about it as shower time.
Yeah.
Can't have your phone in the shower. And so, like, you're sitting there and you begin to think. You're just like, wow, I remember when, and you start to connect things. So, like, for me, the haircut time, the shower time, the workout time, those things when you can't be distracted by devices are a really good time.
Jay, I want you to paint me a picture. 10 years from now, you and I are sitting down. What does Haddy looks like? Where's the world for Jay?
I'm not running Haddy at that time. And so I think that one of the things you have to have is you have to have a North Star. And so I love serving this change from a analog manufacturing world to a digital manufacturing world. But when I get that done, there's other stuff I need to do. And I think that that's just in me. And I'm not going to do this just because I want to make more dollars in for me. I will make plenty of money doing this business. But now I can see I've got one turn around this rock and I want to do it well. And so I've got my exit plan for what I want to do now.
Yep.
Everybody in the team knows that Jay Rogers is not going to be sitting like a rock penguin on top of this as we go forward. Other people are going to take it forward further, faster, farther than I would. And that's what we're going to be talking about in 10 years when we get together.
Jay, I can't hardly wait till 10 years from now just so I can have a chat with you again. Unfortunately, we are running out of time today because you and I could be talking all day. I always have so much fun talking to you. But thank you so much for sitting down with me today and sharing your experience and your knowledge. I have no doubts that our listeners are wanting to learn more from you. How can they reach out to you and how do they find out more about Haddy?
Okay, so you can find us on Instagram at Haddy Life, HADDYLIFE. Or you can find us on our website, which is haddy.life.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Pioneers. You can learn more about the Siemens for Startup by going to our website, Siemens for Startup, and search for design and simulation. If you're interested in reaching out to me, I'll leave my email address below, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. To our listeners, if you find our conversation valuable today, whether you're a founder, investor, or operator, or a potential Haddy customer, make sure to follow us, rate, and share the podcast. Until next time, remember, innovation has no boundaries. Neither should your ambition.